You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
Go, Chris.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of All Things 3D. I'm Chris. This is Mike. Today we've got a really special guest joining us from the Autodesk headquarters, Mr. Carl Bass. Welcome to the program.
Thanks. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So we wanted to get you on the program and kind of find out. Mike had a chance to visit you. I had a chance to visit you virtually over at the CES booth, and it looked like you had so much going on. There was a lot of buzz around the Autodesk booth, and so we wanted to find out kind of like, what you do, where you fit into the picture of Autodesk, and kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
So yeah, and we normally mention for you to ask or mention your name again, as well as what you do and where you reside, because I normally pull out what we just mentioned for our podcast, so we lead directly with you. So Carl, if you want to go ahead and just say that again, we'd appreciate it. So
sure.
Again, who are you?
My name is Carl Bass. I'm the CEO of Autodesk. I live in Berkeley and I work in San Francisco.
Great, that was succinct. Well, one of the things that I noticed, and I'll go back to it, is that on your Wikipedia page, you actually do a little bit more than that. And one thing that I found that was very interesting, and it was my second question here, is what is Flying Moose Systems? Obviously, you must be creative with a name like that. And I kind of read a little bit more, but maybe you can tell us in your own words what that was and how did that play into becoming part of Autodesk?
Yeah, so it was technically Flying Moose Systems and Graphics Limited was the full official name.
Oh, that's very official.
Yeah, so Flying Moose was a company I started with a couple of friends after college. We did a lot of work designing, building 3D graphics applications. And at some point, we actually changed the name to Ithaca Software. And it was his clients, some of our clients were kind of corporate stodgy folk, and they hated the idea of writing POs to Flying Moose. And so we went with the much more generic and unoffensive name of Ithaca Software.
Oh,
wow.
So it more had to do with the other companies you were doing business with.
We totally sold out, but then again, we had no money, so
you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did this become AutoCAD? Or am I wrong in that? Or
It
is that a
didn't
little
become
bit further
AutoCAD. Ithaca Software got sold to Autodesk in, I want to say like 1993. So around 1990, Autodesk invested in Ithaca Software. In 93, it bought it. And parts of what we had worked on became part of a lot of Autodesk products. But we had mostly focused on building graphics applications. So we were all about 3D for visualization, 3D for rendering, 3D interactions, and a lot of that stuff made its way into Autodesk products. But AutoCAD was already a well-established product by the time I joined Autodesk.
Oh, okay. All right. So great. Now I know something new.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming then that maybe Flying Moose Systems was more 3D Studio. Would that be a better relationship?
You know what? What we did is there's stuff that are in 3D Studio Max today that has its roots all the way back to the product we made, which was Hoops. But really what the essence of it was, and by the way, Hoops still exists today. It's sold by another company called TechSoft. And so it's still being used today by lots of companies. But what really it was the graphical foundation for all these applications. Some that were used in entertainment, some in science, and some in engineering. And a lot of the companies tended to be CAD/CAM companies like Autodesk, companies like computer vision, companies like PTC, companies like SolidWorks. They were all customers.
Oh. Great. So at what point did you become CEO? I mean, obviously you have a fairly lengthy career at Autodesk. Maybe very quickly you can identify or show us or show us. Tell us the history of Autodesk and when you became CEO, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of your momentum that I'm more excited about.
Okay, so I've worked. I've done 2 stints at Autodesk. I started working here in '93 and worked until about 1999, and then I left, and then I came back and had a variety of jobs, and then it's probably getting close. It's probably 9 or 10 years that I've been CEO.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
Yes. I kind of get a hint of an East Coast accent. Am I correct there?
Oh, come on, it's coming through. I do a much better job asking.
Well, the reason I mention that is
I'm from New York.
Okay, is that with MakerBot from Brooklyn, and there's a few other companies, Form Labs. There's many people in this maker in the 3D printing that are from the East Coast, in particular the region of New York. So I just think that it's kind of interesting. That we have all this talent coming from the East Coast in this area. You know, it's not only the West Coast that does things. So little shout out there.
I'm thinking these days, if you live long enough, the place you're from becomes cool. I was born in Brooklyn. Grew up in New York City.
Well, there you go. And MakerBot is an international company now.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit, I'll fade over to it real quick, is your article in Wired and how you're wanting to democratize design. And one of the things that's caught my attention is your series of applications, as you call the 1, 2, 3D series, that cover 3D scanning, 3D design, 3D mesh manipulation. I mean, the whole gamut. But the important thing that I recognize is that anybody can get into this because they're for the expensive price of free. And I'm just wondering, from the article that I read in Wired, that you had a lot to do with this, that you yourself are a maker, and you do a lot of woodworking. So can you kind of go through maybe a little bit of the background of how you implemented this? Was it just something that the company was already moving forward with, or did you feel that you yourself, because of your own maker thought process, felt that we need to move in that direction?
I certainly have a lot of empathy for the hobbyists and the people, who do this for fun. The new maker community, based on, what I do. But in many ways, the idea of democratizing 3D has been something that Autodesk has been doing since its founding, and and it's been fantastic. We've increased the number of people who have access to 3D tools by an order of magnitude. Right now we've probably reached about 200 million people with our free tools.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's just an amazing number of people. And, the thing that excites me is just the number of people who are really interested in this. Like one of the places where I always see it, because, people don't really understand, for example, whether the maker movement is a real thing. Is it is it a pet rock? Is it just a point in time? But, one of the things I look at is, you may have seen our Instructables website.
Mm-hmm.
So Instructables, for those who don't know, is, a website where people describe how they make things. And it's a, wide variety of stuff that people talk about what they made and how they made it. 30 million people a month go to the Instructables website, and read it, which is, just an incredible number that really tells me just how much interest there truly is in how to make things, and, how to make things in a non-professional setting, essentially.
Wow, 30 million a month.
Yep.
I use Instructables, at least once a month I use Instructables to, put together projects. There's all kinds of, even Lady Ada from Adafruit, she's got a lot of links up to the Instructables website for little Arduino projects, or, how to do this, how to do that, and it's really helpful. I had no idea that was even part of Autodesk until just now.
Yeah, and so
learned something else new today.
I've got a bunch of Instructables up there. I have 3 or 4 Instructables I've put up there.
Make sure we put some of those links in the show
What's your
notes.
favorite one that you've put up?
Probably my favorite one in some ways. First of all, the interesting thing when you put it on a community site is I could figure out what the community thinks is most interesting, by the number of likes and views. The one I like is how to sharpen a chisel.
Oh, I need that one right now.
That's why I wrote it, because most people who own chisels need this Instructable.
Yeah,
So,
I use mine. I use mine to clean and reclaim my build trays for my 3D printer.
Yeah, and probably and open paint cans too. So anyhow, yeah. So anyhow, I have a couple up there. So I like that one. I also did one on making a baseball bat. There's a bunch of ones up there.
You're a cool guy.
Yeah. Well, we knew that already.
Yeah.
So let's kind of, obviously you've got an engineering background, and also I'm assuming a software development. Do you think that plays an important role in the CEO's position? I know there are others. I think the CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, is more of a manager than an actual engineer. And from your perspective, do you think it helps or is important to have an engineering background being part of a tech company?
So just to be technically clear, and in deference to all my friends who are really engineers, I'm not an engineer. I got a degree in math, and I came into the business, as a software programmer. So I am not a mechanical engineer. I'm not an electrical engineer, like many of the people that I work with. But I do have a technical background, and and if you look at tech companies, I'd say it's kind of split. I think, there are two things that are really important. One is to at least have a technical understanding of how the products work. And then I think, secondly, an empathy for what the customers do. And I think, and so I think certainly, have there been very successful people who have run companies who come from more of a business or management background? Absolutely. I personally wouldn't know how to do the job that way, but certainly others have. And so, but I approach it from the point of view of how are we going to make tools that that our customers or potential customers would really like. What's wrong with the tools that are out there today? What needs to be done? What's difficult? What would make it easier? And the thing about what we do is we are essentially tool makers. So just like, the physical tools of, chisels or, machine tools, we make the digital software tools.
With the virtual tools.
With the virtual tools. And what's really interesting about that is tools in and of themselves, they can be beautiful, they can be interesting, but they really come to life when they're put in the hands of a creative person.
Right.
And so for us, the thing is, how do we work with the community people who do some of the most, imaginative and most creative work in the world, and how do we empower them to do that work better? And that's what I think is, most interesting about what we do.
Well, speaking of Autodesk, how big is Autodesk, and how many divisions do you have? I know that you've got offices throughout the world, and I look at your website, and you add more and more products. So I'm assuming that your what do you want to call it? Your business top-down staff, or what's the word I'm looking for? Oh well, it doesn't really matter. But your business, your company hierarchy is probably very extensive. Is it a standard business hierarchy, or is it more flat? Can you go through a little bit of background on that?
Yeah. So there's, so let me just give you a little background. There's probably about 8,000 people who work full-time in Autodesk, and a little bit more like 10,000 people who, are employees or contractors of Autodesk, somewhere in there.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of people. And one of the things that most people don't know, so put this into your interesting facts category, is about 3/4 of our business is outside the United States. So that even though we're headquartered in the U.S., our business just tends to be where people make things. So, and the three things that I think of, and the way I really think of how the company's, organized in some way, is we make stuff for people who do manufacturing, people who make products, We build tools for people who do the built environment, so that's buildings and tunnels and roads and bridges. And then we make tools for people who are doing movies and video games. And those are really the three sets of people. But then we also have the stuff we do for the consumer business, and so
And now the
there
whole
are
maker
other things in
category.
there. Yeah, there's this whole maker category that kind of crosses over, probably a little bit closer to the product side, the manufacturing products.
Mhm.
But it can be. The nice thing about the makers is there's not many boundaries there. People make what they want to make.
Right.
Speaking of the different lines, you did mention that you had a professional line, which I put AutoCAD, the 3D map program, the Rivet applications. But a lot of these were, as you said, the foundation was AutoCAD, but then you acquired a lot of companies, and some that come to mind to me, and also since you were also in the 3D, what do you want to call it, visualization, is Maya, and then Mudbox. And then
Right.
I just had a question yesterday, because we're talking about the big whale swallowing all the little companies, that is there in the works something to be done with, I think it's Foundation, is that correct? The people behind Modo? Or I'm sorry, the Foundry.
Foundry. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Is there?
Modo is a tool that people use. It has nothing to do with us.
So they're completely independent, and the rumors of
Completely
you acquiring
independent.
them are just
Nothing,
rumors.
nothing to do with us.
Okay.
No, the tools that we have that are more similar to what Modo does would really be 3ds Max and Maya.
Right. I agree. And also Mudbox to a lesser extent.
Mudbox certainly in the same category, and there are a handful of other smaller tools.
And on that issue of your like you said, your freer tools, one of them that really stands out is part of the 123D program, and that is Mesh Mixer. And then you've got this 123D Sculpt. Do the roots of Mesh Mixer and like say 123D design, are they coming from AutoCAD or 3D Studio, or in this case Mudbox, which has a lot of similarities to Mesh Mixer? Are you getting people coming from some of these other departments and moving into this to provide these tools, or are they just out of the box things?
No, actually, most of the work on Mesh Mixer started with work that was done by a guy in Toronto named Ryan Schmidt. He's been working on Mesh Mixer for years, and it was his idea to say that we could probably model things as well, if not better, than using traditional kind of surface and solid technology using meshes. And so there's a team of people led by Ryan who have been working on Mesh Mixer. The 123D design really come from a different strand entirely, and I wouldn't tie it particularly to AutoCAD or Max. And probably the product that I'm most involved with now and doing the most with is a product called Fusion. And Fusion and 123D design share a lot of similarities, and so they have a common heritage. Where so right. Fusion is the product that if you were doing 3D modeling with our stuff, you started out with Tinkercad, and then you might move to 123D design. You'd either move there, or the next thing in line would be Fusion.
Right.
And so we think Fusion is the next generation modeling tool for us. That does both the solids and the surfaces and the meshes.
It's a great tool for very little money.
And as Chris can attest to, I actually use it on a day-to-day basis. I've designed some products.
And it's been getting better and better and better. I mean, you guys are just doing an amazing job with it. I have to ask, for some of our listeners, they are, we obviously have a lot of the maker community and people that are into programming. I do a little bit of programming, like with the Arduino, but is there a common programming language that you guys use at Autodesk that you guys are writing these apps in, or is it all written in? What is Fusion? What do you guys write in?
I think so in many of the more modern applications. So I say traditionally, most of the applications are C++ code. As more and more gets deployed on the web, both in the cloud and on on web browsers and on device, other mobile devices. You see a lot more JavaScript. So
Right.
that's probably the combination. I wouldn't say uniformly that's everything but that probably covers the vast majority.
So if you were a fledgling programmer and you wanted to get a job at Autodesk, then learn C++ and JavaScript.
Yeah. By the way, like if you look at Fusion, like the two things we decided to do when we exposed the API so people can program Fusion, there's actually an API in Python, and there's one in JavaScript.
Oh, beautiful.
And we certainly find those as the two things people most get asked about when trying to extend it. When you get to like more professional people trying to build real applications on our platform, they tend to lean towards the C++.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are some good applications to work with. Python is really big in the scientific community and the engineering because it's
And educational.
Really
Yeah.
and educational.
It's
market.
easy to learn.
That's a
that
good-
was what I learned.
That's a good segue, Chris. The education market. That I think is probably the most important thing that I think Autodesk is doing right. And let me bring up some of the things. If you read my questions there, find very important, and that is what you offer the student. If I remember correctly, I paid $100 and I had access to all of your software for 3 years. And I don't think there was any limitations to it. I was able to work with it and finally settle on going with Fusion, one, because it was within my budget, and two, it just seemed like a better fit for a tool for me. But I had an opportunity to work with Inventor. As mentioned, I've worked with 3D Studio in the past, and this gave me an opportunity to work with a lot of it. Essentially, in my case, I was just taking some extra classes, and I was able to get into the program. But somebody who's just starting out, I think you even offer this to high school students too. Is that correct, Carl? Or?
Yeah. So we've gone even further. You paid too much. We no longer even charge the $100. So what we decided to do this year is to make all of our applications free for students, for faculty, and for institutions worldwide. So that same thing that you got access to, that 3-year license, is now available for free.
Wow.
So,
I'm not complaining.
And that means you could use, Maya one day, you could use Alias the next day, you could, and you could use Revit the day after that. So that's one of the things we've done. I'm really proud, of what we did there. It was a little bit of a tough business decision to do it. But I think it's absolutely the right thing to do, and it gives tremendous access. And we've gone one step further. So one of the things we did with like Fusion, it also is free to students and schools. But we did one more thing. We said the community of startups and entrepreneurs and enthusiasts, hobbyist makers also need access to these professional level tools, and they can't afford what our successful professional customers can. So what we've done with Fusion is everyone in that community of makers and startups, the product is free for them also. And what we ask is when the company starts making money, and we've thrown out there, when a company starts making $100,000 a year using Fusion, then we ask you to pay. And then the last part, and even the last part of it, we try to make it affordable even when you do pay. So that
I was going to make that point.
Great, you make it for me.
Yeah, well, $300 is what I paid for because I got in when it was free, and if I took advantage, which I did, for $300 I now have the Fusion 360 Ultimate subscription. And again, it's a subscription, so every year I pay $300, but the price of your software as well as other companies is, may I use the word horrific, it's extremely expensive, and this brings it down. And I think, I'm not saying that you took a page from Adobe, but I think Adobe did a great job in offering subscriptions and providing, like, I pay $39.95 for my corporate license or my business license for the whole Adobe suite. And these are the tools I use on a day-to-day basis, and you've done the same thing. So I use your tools as well as Adobe's, and they're all within a person's budget. And I just think this is going to just bring more products out there and just more attention to both you and Adobe But
Yeah, no, thanks. No, we thought it was really important that, we could get it in the hands of people at an affordable price. And if you look at something like Fusion, it's a far more capable product than most people would imagine at that price point. And as you noted, I mean, we continue to add to it, and we want to make it, the most comprehensive program for doing product design, and keep it at that price point.
yeah. So one other thing that you do that I think is really important is your free online courses. Again, not to keep bringing up Adobe, but there's some similarities in the type of programs. You have a ton of videos and online material so that if you are a novice and don't know a lot about a particular application, you provide a wealth of instructional videos and papers so that a person can take these and start working with them immediately, which I think is very important. It's one thing to have a great tool, but if you don't know how to use the tool, it's useless. And I really commend you for that. And if you want to comment on that, and then I want to run directly into the Spark because
Yeah, sure.
I want to keep you within your 30 minutes.
Yeah, so what we found from people who use our products is that they really want just-in-time learning, and the most frequent place people go to figure out how to use our products is they go to YouTube. And so rather, and we've all tried to use kind of the help systems that are built into products, and they're of marginal utility. Occasionally, you type something in and you get what you want, but people really want to know when they want to know it. And so we just try to contribute to what people were already doing and go into YouTube. And so we've done a lot, but I'd also thank the community of Autodesk users who have done a tremendous amount and create, way more content than we create ourselves. And so it's a combination of what we do to kind of initiate it, but a lot of the users really do an awesome job at describing how to use the product.
And you mentioned the users, and that's a good segue into the Spark program. I think this is an excellent program, and it does bring the users back, and kind of you giving back to the user community and providing the Spark program, which you can present an idea to you, and you will work out ways to, I don't know if there'll be any financial funding, but providing the tools and the support for this particular idea to be brought to the market, and I think that's cool. Did I get that right, Carl, or do you want to add anything to that?
I mean, I think there are a few things we're doing. So one is we're doing Spark, which is the software platform that we're going to make open to other people who want a software platform for 3D printing. The second thing we did is we did the Ember printer. So we have a printer that we sell, but is open software, open hardware, and open materials. So you can put whatever material you want in it. It's an SLA machine, runs off of a DLP, and we are selling them, but we're also publishing the plans so that if people want to make their own, they can. If they make their own or they buy ours, we've also talked about the specs for the material so people can take and experiment. And really what we wanted was a machine that was an experimental machine where people could really kind of experiment with new materials and new things. And so, yeah, there's the picture of the Ember. So we have the Ember, and then we have Spark, which is the software platform that runs across a variety of devices.
Now, this is still a work in progress, though, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just starting. And as you know with software is almost never finished. And
it's never finished.
Yeah, and so whether I'm talking about Fusion or whether we're talking about Spark and Ember, these are the starts of these things. And what we think is important is developing it in concert with the community, just working together to figure out what the direction is. And there are a variety of ways to do that. But like, for example, when I look at what we've done with Fusion, which is just what we intend to do with Spark, there is a very active communication channel through the user forums where we're talking to users all day long about what they see, what problems they have, how to make it better, suggestions for improvements in the future. When we think about what we're going to do next month and the month after, one of the high priority stuff is the things that the community says is important to them.
Oh, that's great to hear.
And I think that's a really different way of developing software. I think a lot of people like going off for 6 months or 12 months and delivering something, And if you look at Fusion, we've been delivering something every month, and it's and it's working really closely with the people who are giving back to the community and telling us what they want to see.
Great.
That was going to be my last question, is to sum up what you're going to be doing in the future, but you kind of did that for me, so we're kind of done.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
We'll give you the last word, though. Is there anything
Yes.
else exciting that you want to tell us about, or we'll give you the last word here?
No, like you saw, I'm really excited about what we're doing in education. I'm really excited about Fusion. And I saw like a little link on the screen to the talk that Jeff and I did at AU, where we talk a lot about some of the stuff, mostly around generative design, which is, I think a really interesting new area. It's on the horizon more like research, but I think if you want to look to the future, that's a great pointer to where we really lay out what we think happens in the future. So
good. Well, it was really great to have you on. Actually, I don't know, kind of a dream for me. As I said, I've worked with Autodesk for decades now, and just reading about you and seeing what has happened in the last couple of years is just fantastic, and the support you've done to provide tools for people who in the past couldn't afford them, and I think it's really showing. I mean, all the stuff that's being built that just a few years ago would not have been possible. Obviously the 3D printers are important, but if you don't have the proper tools for it, 3D printers are just, as a lot of people said, making little doorknobs. So I appreciate you coming on, and appreciate you identifying the role behind Autodesk, and thank you.
Well, thanks so much for the kind words. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for you guys, what you do in getting the word out there.
All right. Well, thanks to Mr. Carl Bass, and we had an exciting episode of All Things 3D. We will see you on Friday.
Actually, tomorrow, Chris, we have another interview with the CEO of SixSense, who creates the STEM system. We also cover VR a lot, Carl. I think that's an exciting area that we'll be incorporating in design as well. So we have that tomorrow, and then Friday is our standard weekly 3D in review, and we'll probably be talking about you again then, Carl. So again,
keep up the good work.
Thanks very much.
All right. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Okay, we're still on.
Thanks, Carl.